Hey guys, thank you for stopping in today's video. Sorry about the reverb because I'm not in my normal place, nor is this a normal video that I usually record for y'all. So today we're talking about how much it takes to actually manual swap your IS300, and more specifically we're going to be talking about doing the R154 swap. This was a Mark III Super transmission instead of the Soarer R154. So it comes with, I guess in a way this is kind of the worst trans because it has less synchros. I don't really care so much because it seems like it's going to be the same ordeal. So yeah, it doesn't really matter to me. I know a lot of people do the W58 AR5, which is kind of close to R154, or the CD009. This one, the only reason I went with this is because I found a really good deal on the transmission. This is kind of a drift car, so the transmissions may not be the best for drifting because it has kind of long gears and they're kind of weirdly spaced. But mainly what we're going to be talking about is how much it takes to manual swap it and what parts you're going to need to manual swap it. So again, this is from Auto to manual. So if you already have a manual, this could be relatively cheaper, probably about $500 to $1,000 cheaper, depending on what price you can find these parts at. So to get started, I bought my R154 for $1,600. I got this from a guy off of Marketplace. This one was already built with the Molly kit, which is a kit that you'll probably really want to do with this. For the R154, they have a really bad problem with cracking or even breaking their shift forks. I don't actually remember. I think they're a steel shift fork and they get stress cracks in them. So with the Molly kit, you get a built aluminum shift fork. This one actually only came with the thrust bearing 1 to 2 shifter fork. I went ahead and rebuilt it again with the Molly kit just to make sure, but for $1,600 with the Molly kit already in hand, and if you send it to Molly themselves, it usually takes about $1,600 to get it done. So I basically just paid for the rebuild and got the transfer free, so that's perfect. Again, I found that off of Marketplace. Next up, I did a drive shaft, and weirdly enough, this was probably the second most expensive part of the entire swap. I went with the Drive Shaft Shop steel drive shaft. They came out to $462. Originally it was $390, but as soon as I bought it, they sent me an audit that's saying that it went up in price, and I just bought this as soon as Corona came, so I'm guessing that might have to do with that. Next up, I went with a clutch kit. For this one, I went with a Driftmotion Stage 1 clutch kit, and this was $250. It's good if you want to keep the GE, but I just upgraded to a 1JZ. I'm already experiencing slipping issues. I believe this clutch is a stock clutch for a Mark III Supra, but it's still slipping. It might just be from a poor break-in or the extra mounts that I put on the 1J where it's making a little bit more torque. And I honestly recommend either a stage 3 or stage 4, depending on what you're doing. I would recommend a stage 4 if you're gonna be drifting, and you could probably get away with a stage 2 or stage 3, depending on what your power levels are. Stage 2 if you wanna keep it stock, and stage 3 if you wanna do relatively like 350, 400 wheels, what they're usually good for. I'm personally about to upgrade to the Injuku Racing Stage 4 clutch. This is a 4-puck clutch. It's sprung and it's a competitive clutch, so it's really good for drifting. And I hear people say they don't have any issues with it after a couple years of having it and drifting. So that's the one I'm upgrading to. I believe that one's around $700. So depending on what route you want to go, it's up to you. Again, I went with the Stage 1, which is $250, and that's really good if you want to do the GE. Didn't have any problems with it, and it held really good. I did a couple drift events on it, no slipping at all, and worked perfect. Next up for the flywheel, I went with the Driftmotion Lightened aluminum flywheel. This one was pretty good actually. It's I think 9 pounds lighter, or 8 pounds, or 11 or something. I'll go ahead and throw it up on the screen how light it was. And this one, you just need a flywheel. If you don't want to do it that way, I believe you can use a Mark III flywheel. Just make sure it's for a JZ. I don't know if they make another R154 flywheel that's not for JZ, but you can just use a Mark III Super flywheel, I believe, and you should be good to go. I bought this flywheel for $384. I believe it was $350 for it, but I went ahead and got I think it's called the Evo 9 or Evo 8 flywheel bolt locking plate. It's just to make sure, since it's an aluminum flywheel, you don't want your bolts backing out. Again, you want to Loctite your bolts, but it's just an extra precaution to make sure that stuff doesn't fly out, so always good. Next up are the pedals. To be honest with you, you could probably just go with the excessive pedal kit and cut your auto brake pedal. That's probably the cheapest option, and for the excessive clutch pedal, you can probably get that for about $200. Really good. I don't know why I wanted to do it this way. Again, I got this off of Facebook Marketplace, and I got a pretty okay deal. Pretty expensive still compared to the excessive clutch pedal, but I went ahead and got a kit that came with a clutch pedal, a brake pedal, the pads, the master cylinder, and the slave cylinder. So that's really good because I actually needed another slave cylinder, which we'll get into later. And again, I got that for about 350 bucks off of Facebook Marketplace. And I think that's a steal, so don't expect to find it because they're really, really hard to find at a good, reasonable price. Next up is going to be a extended housing for your transmission. This will allow your shifter to be in the right location. That way you don't have to cut anything. Whenever I did my R154 swap, some people say you have to cut the housing out a little bit bigger or put the manual trans housing on. I didn't have to do any of that actually. It fit perfect, no cutting. It just lined up right in the middle of the hole and everything worked fine. I paid $200 for mine just because it came with my transmission already, and he was planning to do an SC300 swap, which is like a 6-inch extended housing or something, and you need a 2.5 inch. So I just took it to a local fab shop in town and they just cut it for me, paid 200 bucks and we're good to go. Now, if you don't get the luxury of it coming with the transmission, you can always go to Driftmotion and they sell an extended housing for your Soarer R154 and for your Mark III R154. So just make sure you pick the right one. The way you can tell is by the spacing of the bolts wherever your shifter housing actually mounts up. So just make sure you pick the right one, and I believe they sell the extended housings for about $400 on there. Next up is something that you don't actually need, but if you're gonna do the model crawler kit, you're probably gonna go there and do it. It's gonna be your trans rebuild. Now again, you don't have to do a trans rebuild or put the model crawler kit or take apart your transmission at all. You can just throw it in and run it as it is. But the reason I did it this way is so I can actually take a look at the trans to make sure all the gears and the hubs and everything else is fine in the transmission. I'm glad I did this because my countershaft bolt on the bottom actually came loose and it was gonna be a disaster if I didn't get it rebuilt. So I paid $300 for the rebuild and I checked on the gears and everything was fine. Just in case you do have problems with your gears, your hubs, your brush washers, anything, Driftmotion sells it on their site. They're kind of expensive, so you might be able to find it somewhere else for cheaper, but just in case you can't, Driftmotion, I believe, sells everything for the R154 now. It was discontinued for a while, but they finally got the stuff in stock. Next up is for clutch lines. I did a Enjuku Racing clutch line, I believe. I don't remember the exact diameters, but I'll put it down in the description with the link to it. I believe VT Bobby does a yellow Enjuku line with his W55 swap. This one is a black, kind of hardish line. It's not a soft line and it's not a hard line. It's right in between, so that's always good. Again, I paid $45 for this, so it's a pretty good deal. Next up is going to be for your flywheel bolts. I got this off of Driftmotion for $55. These are ARP flywheel bolts, so really, really good. You shouldn't have any problems with these, and you definitely need these. I believe the stock ones are torque to yield, so you probably don't want to reuse those. You could run into some issues with those. Next up is a master cylinder for the car. You can get this with the excessive clutch pedal as a kit, but if you don't want to do that, you can find them on Facebook Marketplace, the Junkyard, anywhere for about $30, so that's really good. Also, you're gonna need a slave cylinder. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can go to Autozone and get one for about $100. I don't really trust that stuff because it's Duralast and they're sometimes pretty bad. I got mine with the kit with the clutch pedal, so that was really good, and also got an extra one with my R154. So if you can find this stuff with your R154, you'll save a lot of money because this stuff kind of adds up. These usually run for about $110. So if you, again, I got my transmission for $1,600. So again, it's just adding free stuff onto the transmission. You can get this from the junkyard too, but you're gonna need it from an R154, which are relatively hard to find unless you can find a parts car in the junkyard, and you can get all this stuff for a really good deal. Next up is gonna be the R154 clutch fork. Again, my transmission came with the one, so I didn't have to buy one. But you can find these for about $60 on Facebook groups like 1JZ/2JZ swap parts, or even Facebook Marketplace if you're lucky enough. But you can find these for around $60, maybe a little bit cheaper. I know it seems like a lot for just a clutch fork, and it really is, but JZ stuff is getting pretty expensive now, so you might want to pick these up while you can. Now, fluids is kind of where it got expensive and you wouldn't think it would. I was expecting to spend about $40-50 on trans fluids, but R154s have copper synchros or brass synchros, or has a special type of synchro. For R154s, you actually need to use Redline MT90. People will hate on you if you don't use the Lucas brand. You can, it doesn't coat the synchros right, so you really need to use the Redline MT90. For this, I paid about $100 off of Amazon. You can get an entire gallon, I believe, or 4 quarts, or 4 liters, or whatever it is. It's 4 liters in quarts, I think they're the same thing. Again, you can get this for about like $75, $100 off Amazon. Really good. Next up is the pilot bearing. I got this off of Driftmotion for about $8 or $4 in shipping. So really cheap. You need it. Don't forget it or else you won't be able to do your swap. For miscellaneous things, I paid about $53.75. Now for mounts, I got a R154 to the IS300 mount off of eBay. It's a guy from the IS300 group named Dylan Hiedo, and he sells the R154 to IS300 mounts on eBay. You can also get it from him. I linked the eBay listing down below. This I paid about 120 bucks, I believe, 100 bucks. Really good. And then for the actual mount itself, I used a polyurethane mount from, I believe, Redline 360. Pretty good. It's kind of noisy. You get a lot of whine into the cabin. The only complaint I have about the actual polyurethane mount is that the studs that bolt onto the mount itself kind of come out easily. Like if you over tighten the bolt, it'll rip the whole stud out. But it's really good quality, so I'm going to use it. I haven't had any problems with it besides just whining and the stud coming out. This I believe you can get for about 110 bucks, 120 bucks. And the only reason I went with this instead of like a stock one is because you're gonna pay the exact same for a stock R154 rubber mount compared to the polyurethane. So why not just get a performance urethane mount? Altogether, I paid $239 for the actual R154 to IS300 mount brace and for the actual polyurethane mount, which isn't too bad. You can probably find these for a little bit cheaper, but again, I went on eBay and found the mount and it's pretty cheap there, so I doubt you're gonna find a cheaper mount, and it's really good quality too. Okay, for the actual shifter, so I got a Cube Speed R154 shifter. I started with a kind of crane, where I'll put a picture up, a crane Cube Speed shifter for the R154. I messed up because I really wanted a straight shifter instead of a crane shifter. So what happened was, so basically I got a free shifter from Cube Speed. I paid for one and got two shifters. I messed up because I wanted a straight shifter for the R154 and nobody was selling one. So I ordered a Soarer R154 shifter, I believe. It didn't fit the R154, so I told them I wanted to swap it out. I didn't mean to rob you, but they sent me my money back and I didn't have to send back the actual shifter itself. And then I went on to eBay and found a crane shifter, which is a lot cheaper on eBay compared to their site, so I would get it off of eBay. I got a crane shifter for $232 from them, and pretty good price. It definitely is worth it to get a short shifter for the R154. If you use the stock shifter, that'd be your first, that would be your second, and compared with the short shifter, that's your first, that's your second. So it's really short. I think I have a video, and I'll go ahead and throw it up. But again, I still wanted a straight shifter, so I just took the actual straight shifter mechanism from the Soarer shifter and put it onto my working R154 shifter, and now I have a straight shifter. So again, you can just put a threaded piece of rod on your working R154 shifter and make that work if you want a straight shifter. But I had both pieces, so I went ahead and made that work for me. Next up is your pressure plate bolts. I got this from Driftmotion for $21, so really good, and they're ARP bolts, so you shouldn't have any problems with it. Just make sure you Loctite everything, torque them down to spec, and that should conclude your R154 swap. Altogether, I paid $4,059.98. Pretty easy swap. If you do the Marlin Crawler rebuild and send it to them, or if you just get the Driftmotion rebuild kit, which is what I did. If you do the rebuild and everything, you're looking closer to $5,200, but you can save about $1,200 if you either find it rebuilt already or don't rebuild it. So again, I paid about $4,000 for it. So it's pretty much worth it because I can do almost any power level I want. About 500, 600 horsepower is kind of what people see with these. Again, there's people that claim to see 800, 900 horsepower on these. Of course, it's not drag racing. If you plan to do drag racing, you're probably gonna blow these things up. They're kind of like glass, honestly. It's kind of surprising because you hear about how strong they are, but whenever you're drifting with these, or if you're dragging with these, if you clutch kick a lot while drifting, that seems to destroy the transmission, and if you do a lot of hard launches, it seems to destroy the transmission. So besides that, I really like it. I mean, I use it for drifting, so it's not that bad of a trans, but again, I only have about 300 horsepower. So if you like these videos and you want me to do a 1JZ swap video, let me know. Again, sorry about the quality of the video. I'm not where I usually am, and I need to get a video out to you guys. So if you have any more video ideas, leave them down in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to get those done. I'm working on doing a 2020 recap video, so y'all can see everything that I did last year, as well as getting some more drifting videos coming out, because we have another drift event coming February. So I got to get the car ready, pretty much ready. The only thing the car really needs now is a clutch, and everything's going pretty smoothly with it. So Also, I gotta do the 1JZ reveal to you guys because I have yet to make an actual video about the 1J. So I'll go ahead and do the 1J video first and then do a how much it costs. So if you're looking for those videos, let me know in the comments and make sure to like and subscribe.